For centuries, it was one of the last great mysteries on Earth, a secret hidden deep in the heart of Africa. Where did the River Nile, the very lifeblood of ancient Egypt, actually begin? It was a question that obsessed empires. Well, today, we're diving into the journal of the man who is utterly determined to be the one to solve it, Captain John Hanning Speke.
But before we even take a single step into that vast unknown, we have to understand the man leading the way. And the best way to do that is with his own words. This quote, right from the introduction of his journal, sets the stage. It's a really stark and controversial worldview, and believe me, it colors every single thing he sees and every person he meets on this incredible journey.
You really have to get your head around this. Finding the source of the Nile wasn't just some mapping expedition. It was a global obsession. For the Victorian world, this was their moon landing. It was about conquering the very last blank spot on the map. And for John Hanning Speke, a British Army officer, it wasn't just a mission, it was a personal, all-consuming quest.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you how absolutely brutal this journey was from the get-go. He leaves Zanzibar in 1860, but it takes nearly 2 full years of non-stop, grueling travel just to get to the great kingdoms of the interior. This was not a quick trip. It was a slow, agonizing crawl across a massive and completely unforgiving landscape.
And that crawl, it was a relentless battle for survival. We have this romantic image of the heroic explorer standing on a mountaintop. But when you actually read Speke's journal, that image just shatters. The day-to-day reality was a desperate fight, not just against the unknown, but against 1,000 very real threats that were trying to kill him every single day. So what did that daily nightmare actually look like? Well, it was death by 1,000 cuts. Just imagine it. The porters, carrying the beads and cloth you need to buy food and passage, they just vanish into the wilderness. You cross into a new chief's territory and he demands hongo, a tribute that just bleeds your supplies dry. And on top of that, you're getting lost for days, betrayed by traders, and things are constantly being stolen from your camp. It was this draining, non-stop psychological war. And then there was the sheer physical breakdown. It wasn't just the world outside. His own body started to turn on him. This quote, it really gets to the human cost of it all. Speke gets hit by this illness, a violent cough and fever that just lays him out flat. He writes about being so weak he can't even stand, trapped in bed having absurd dreams. It's like the continent itself was trying to physically break him. So how in the world do you keep an expedition from falling apart under these conditions? Well, this number tells a pretty grim story. 50. That's how many lashes Speke ordered for a porter they managed to recapture. A guy who had not only run away, but had also stolen a vital load of beads. It's a brutal, frankly shocking glimpse into the kind of iron-fisted discipline he felt he had to use. So, after months and months of that grueling chaos in the wilderness, the story takes a massive turn. Speke goes from the anarchy of the march into the highly organized, incredibly powerful, and really complex courts of the great African kingdoms. His first major destination is the Kingdom of Karage, and you have to imagine the relief. After all that struggle, arriving at the court of King Rumanika must have felt like finding an oasis in the desert. He's finally welcomed, treated as an honored guest by a king he describes as genuinely gentle, smart, and kind. Life in Rumanika's court was this whole other world, full of sophisticated rituals. Speke writes about exchanging gifts, about seeing the king's fat wives, which was a symbol of royal status and wealth, and hearing these incredible local legends, like one about a magic drum. He and the king even have these long talks about religion. But even here, with a man he clearly respects, Speke's own worldview is right there. He concludes that these people had somehow just lost their knowledge of God. Okay, but the next kingdom he enters brings a massive shift in tone. Speke leaves the calm, gentle diplomacy of Karage and walks straight into the domain of King Tessa of Uganda. Mutesa is younger, he's more powerful, and he is way more unpredictable. The tension is just palpable from the moment Speke arrives.
Mutesa's court was just a spectacle of absolute power. The king himself, dressed in this beautiful bark cloth, is surrounded by hundreds of wives, by officers, by musicians. It was this vibrant, highly structured center of authority. And Speke, the strange European visitor, was basically just another curiosity in the king's vast collection.
And this is where that initial wonder just curdles into horror.
Speke sees an old man get dragged before the king, accused of helping one of the king's wives run away. And without any real trial, Matisse sentences them both to this unspeakably gruesome, slow death. It's a terrifying lesson for Speke. In this court, the king's slightest whim is law, and human life can be extinguished in an instant.
So you get this incredible dynamic between these two powerful men, each trying to show off for the other. Speke demonstrates the power of his world, the modern world, by shooting a cow from a distance with his rifle, which just amazes the court. And Mtesa, in turn, demonstrates his power, the absolute authority over life and death. It was this tense, almost chilling cultural exchange of power.
For months, Speke is basically Mutesa's guest, which really means he's a prisoner in a gilded cage. He's getting more and more frustrated, more anxious, but he has to play the game. He has to be diplomatic. And then, finally, after what must have felt like an absolute eternity, the king gives him permission to leave the court and head north, to finally find the river.
Now here is a really key piece of the whole puzzle. Why was the source so hard to pin down? Well, a big part of the problem was language. The local word, Nyanza, could mean any large body of water. It could be a lake, a pond, or the river itself. So when guides told explorers about the Nyanza, nobody knew what they were actually talking about. The only way to solve it, for sure, was to see the river flowing out of the lake with your own two eyes.
And then the moment arrives. He stands there at a place called Ripon Falls, and he sees it, a powerful river flowing north, right out of this immense inland sea that he would name Lake Victoria. Now, he hadn't mapped the entire lake, and his rivals would use that against him later. But for him, in that moment, the logic was undeniable. He felt this profound sense of peace and accomplishment. He had done it. He had found the source of the Nile.
So there it is. The quest is over, right? The mystery that baffled the world is finally solved. But this is where the story gets really, really complicated, because finding the source is one thing. The legacy of the man who found it, that's a whole other story.
Let's go all the way back to the introduction of his own journal. His opinions are laid bare for the world to see. He concludes that the African people he met had a high proficiency for lying, were consumed by superstitious beliefs, and had absolutely no knowledge of God. This wasn't just some private thought in a diary, this was the official framework he presented to the Western world.
And this quote just drives that point home. Think about it. After being hosted, guided, fed, and ultimately kept alive by countless African people, chiefs, and kings for more than 2 years, this is one of his final sweeping judgments. It reveals this deep-seated condescension that is just completely inseparable from his historic achievement.
And that brings us to this final, really challenging question. Speke's journey was an incredible, almost superhuman feat of endurance and willpower. He solved a geographical mystery that had stumped humanity for thousands of years. But he saw the world and the people in it through a lens that was deeply prejudiced and, frankly, damaging. So how do we reckon with that? How do we balance the remarkable achievement with the controversial legacy? That is the complicated, messy truth of the Explorer's Journal.